Hello and welcome back to my channel. Why do you keep doing that? That's embarrassing. It's Laura and today we are going to be doing our May wrap-up. So I finally broke the streak. I did not read 24 books in May. I only read 13 books in May. Also, I'm not currently wearing my contacts, so I will have to put on my glasses to read these stats. I can't wear them the whole time because of the little ring light situation, because you can see the little ring light situation in my glasses. But my eyes hurt, so I'm not wearing my contacts. So in May, I read 13 books. 10 of those books were physical, 3 were ebooks, none of them were audiobooks. 11 of those books were written by one female, 1 was written by 2 females, and 1 was written by a male. 12 of the books were written by white authors, 1 was written by an author of color. I read 4,152 pages, which makes sense because I read almost half of the number of books this month, so it makes sense that I would read half the number of pages. But my average star rating was 4.33, so the rating actually went up. So that's pretty awesome, I think. In my own personal opinion, that's pretty cool. So as I said, most of them were physical books, so I'll actually have the book to show you. So the first book I read, or that I finished, is Fragility by DiAngelo. This is an exploration on why it's so hard for white people to talk about race. I was reading this at night as my do better book. I really enjoyed it. I didn't give it a star rating because I feel like it's weird to give a nonfiction book a star rating. I thought it was really interesting though, and I'm interested on some of the examples she has on how to be a better ally. So this was really good. I'm really glad that I read this. This was book number 1. Next, I read The Cruel Prince. I read this as part of a TikTok books are they worth the hype video, which has not come out yet because I have not finished reading all the books from TikTok because I bought a lot of them. This was good. I wasn't a huge fan of how terrible a person our enemy was. So this whole series is an enemies to lovers fantasy, and I wasn't a huge fan of the person that our main character was trying to get with because they were like a really bad person, abusive, and kind of a murderer a little bit, like low-key killer. You try to redeem him throughout the book, and I just don't think it's enough for me to really forgive him as a person. Like, I'm like, oh, your childhood was rough. You know, people have rough childhoods and don't abuse others. Just a thought. But so this was okay. I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read I don't have because I read it and immediately gave it to my sister to read. It's called The Kiss Quotient by Helen, Hoang. It was so good. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was absolutely adorable. I loved it. I'm such a fan. There was so much growth in Stella's character. I was a big fan. Next, I read Laurel Everywhere. This was an arc that I was given a really long time ago. I gave this one 4 stars. This book gave me nightmares. I was just heartbroken and so sad. It's just like the most depressing book because everyone's dying. Like at the very beginning, Laurel has lost every member of her family except her dad. So her mom, her brother, and her sister all died in a car accident before the book started. And her dad is like kind of going off the rails because of all of this death. And it's just so depressing. Like I kind of waited for it. Dear Edward was another book that was like really depressing and it made me cry a bunch. But Dear Edward, I feel kind of picked up the pace a little bit and was like, we're gonna talk about other things. We're gonna talk about relationships and how you forge those relationships after you've lost everyone you loved and you're kind of a little scared about it. And this book really didn't have that. It was just death, sadness, and I did not appreciate that. I gave it 4 stars. It was well written, but it was so sad. Next, I read A Lady's Guide to Mischief and Mayhem. I've had this book forever. I bought it, I think because a person recommended it to me, like an actual person in a bookstore. I asked what I should get and they were like, this one's really good. So I bought it and it just took me forever to read it. I gave it 4 stars. It was interesting. It was a historical romance, but there wasn't very much romance and there really wasn't very much historical either. Like, they didn't talk funny or anything. So it was good. I liked it. Once I picked it up, it was quick read, but going to pick it up was a struggle, if I'm honest. I don't know why this one didn't call to me like some of the other ones, but it was good. 4 stars. I read The Wicked King by Holly Black. So after I read Cruel Prince, I was like, I don't know if I like this. Do I like this? I feel like I like this. I'm not really sure though. And then immediately ordered the other 2 in the series because I was like, I need to know how to finish it. I need to know how it finishes. I just need to. So I read this one. I liked this one. Okay, but this felt slow. I feel like the second book in every series kind of feels slow to me. Like Mistborn was slow, the second book. And this one just kind of felt slow. Like the whole book was like over the course of like 2 or 3 months. And I was like, isn't there more that's gonna happen? I don't know. But it was okay. I gave it 4 stars. And then I read The Queen of Nothing. And I read this one. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I thought it was a really good ending to the books. I wish the Carden in this book was the same Carden in the first 2 books. Like, I feel like in this book, you didn't know that he used to abuse her when she was little, for like the first 10 years of her life. So I shipped them more in this book because I was like, oh, I love him, because you could kind of forget how terrible he was. So I gave this one 4.5 stars. So I thought it was a really good end. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. It took me forever to read this. My mother gave me this book forever ago, and she was like, you know, like she didn't want to read it. She got it at Book of the Month Club and she was like, I'm not really interested in reading this. And I was kind of like, oh, okay. So I think that kind of, even though people kept telling me it was great, I think I was kind of nervous because I knew my mom wouldn't want to read it and we have very similar tastes. So I finally read it. And oh my gosh, this book is so good. 5 stars. I told my mom, I was like, I'm giving it back to you and you have to read it. It's so good. This is exactly, because she's like, I don't think it's my kind of book. This is exactly her kind of book. I was like, no. You have to read this book. It was so good. And the writing was so exquisite. And this was such a good book. 5 stars. Next I read They Both Die at the End by Silvera. So the title is They Both Die at the End. I've read things before saying they both die at the end, and for some reason I was still heartbroken when they both died. Like, for the whole book I was like, it's not, both of them aren't gonna die. I know that the title is, but both of them aren't gonna die. I can tell. There was a mistake. There wasn't a mistake. They die. Although if you're anything like me, you're probably like, she's just saying that and they don't both die, because that was also me. I saw people who were like, they both died, and I'm like, but are they just saying that? Is it some big elaborate ruse? It's not. They both die. It was so good though. I gave it 4.5 stars. This one also though gave me bad dreams. The book was really good, so 4.5 stars. Next, I read a couple of books because of TikTok. And this is different than the books I'm reading for my TikTok challenge. I have been in this terrible thing lately where I will see one of those TikTok trailers for book where they get you invested and they're like, here's the book. I keep falling for those. So this one was called Built to Fall by Julia Wolf. It was about a woman who finds out her husband is cheating on her, and so she decides to go on tour with a rock star and she got hired, even though she doesn't have any experience. She got hired by his PR person, who happens to be his ex-wife, because she wasn't his usual type and she wanted someone who wasn't going to sleep with him. It was good. I gave it 4 stars. I was expecting more. Like, the ex-husband was like abusive in the beginning. Like, she literally had a concussion, and then we don't hear from him the whole rest of the book. And I'm like, that was an easy flip around. So it was okay. I liked it. It was 4 stars, but I was just kind of expecting a little bit more to the story. The next book that did the same thing was Foes and Cons by Carrie Erin. I love Carrie Erin. I feel like every time I read a book and I'm like, oh, it's Carrie Erin. Of course it is. I love her. This was really, really good. This was an enemies to lovers, well, childhood friends to enemies to lovers. I'm so sorry there are children screaming in the background. I don't know if you can hear that, but I sure can. This was a childhood friends to enemies to lovers. I gave it 3.5 stars. Kind of for the same reason that I was kind of iffy on Cruel Prince. They were really good friends, and then they were like enemies, and he was like rude and a bully and terrible. And then they were lovers, and then they skipped forward a bunch, and I was like, come on, let's hurry this along. I thought she was gonna be his dirty little secret for a little longer. I was a little disappointed, for honest, about the timeline, about the pacing of the book, really. Not about the actual book. The book was good. 3.5 stars. The next book that I read was Meet Me in Paradise. This was my Once Upon a Book Club book pick. You can see the video for that. I'll link it below. Meet Me in Paradise by Libby. Hubscher. I gave this 4.5 stars. I really liked it, but you can hear all about it in my Once Upon a Book Club video, which is linked in the description. So this was 4.5 stars. The second to last book that I read was The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. I pre-ordered this book because I love Christina Lauren, and this is actually my first 5-star Christina Lauren read. All the books I've read by them I've enjoyed, but I've never even won 5 stars. This was 5 stars. It was so good. The only qualm that I had was the ending, because there was like a twist, and I enjoyed the twist, but then at the very end they like dropped a little bit of knowledge, and I was just kind of upset about it. But I loved it. It was 5 stars. And the very last book I read this month was When Stars Burn Out, again by Carrie Erin. This was another book that TikTok recommended to me, and I immediately read because it was free on Kindle Unlimited. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It always makes me mad when people get ghosted and then the person comes back in their life and they're like, I never loved anybody but you. I'm like, that's disrespectful. Like, to yourself. Like, why are you waiting around for this person who literally treated you like crap? Like, I just feel like she got over it really quickly, and I was upset about it. Like, I was like, no, make him grovel, girl. Make him grovel. So I gave that one 3.5 stars. But that is the very last book that I read in May. It was a lighter month for a multitude of reasons. Mostly because we moved and I was doing a bunch of that instead of reading. But I'm hoping to get back into it in June, since I have a lot of travel days ahead of me. But thank you so much for watching. If you have any recommendations for me, or if you want any recommendations, please comment down below. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.